Dr. Blay Whitby. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for hanging around long enough to listen, if you are going to listen. It's true what Tim said at the start of the evening. I published my first book on the ethics of AI in 1988. It's out of print now, but I'll tell you basically what it says. It says, this is a really powerful technology. We need to talk about regulation and ethics before it all falls into the wrong hands. It's 2024 now, it's fallen into the wrong hands, it's too late. But I'm not here tonight to say, I told you so. I'm here to ask you a question, which is, do you want a robot lover? And the most important thing on that screen is the question mark. Now there is a very serious side to this, because you might recently have heard Elon Musk, interviewed by one Rishi Sunak, say that AI will eventually do all jobs. And it occurs to me, I don't know about you, but it occurs to me that a better interviewer might have followed that up with, really? All? But that didn't happen. So I'm throwing that question out to you right now, all. In particular, the job of intimate companion, because there's 7.5 billion, I'm not a mathematician, rough figure. Look, the planet is thoroughly infested with human beings. One thing we're not short of. So why would you want to throw technology at this? Now I can see good jobs for robots, clearing out Chernobyl, exploring Mars, but some of these jobs that we're talking about, I'm not entirely convinced. So there is a serious side to this. Okay, apologies to any Jane Austen fans in the room for stealing Jane's joke, but I'm going to make it up to you. Well, I can make it up to you by giving you a quote from the 21st century equivalent of Jane Austen, coming up later in the talk. Watch out for that. And also, I can probably tell you some things about Jane Austen that you don't know. But anyway, the serious side to this is people have decided that you want a robotic companion. They haven't asked you, they've decided. Who's decided? Well, David Levy for a start. Right, in this book, the cover picture is not an idle joke. He says, by 2050, and in my field it's always good to have a definite date, by 2050, progressive states, although it doesn't say which states are progressive, but progressive states will recognise marriage to robots. And as if by magic, in June 2023, Rosanna Ramos announced that she was going to marry her AI companion. She had a virtual marriage online, which is appropriate because she was marrying a virtual entity. So maybe that prediction is true. But I'll throw a few little thoughts out at you. It all depends on your definition of marriage. Right? I live in Brighton, and I frequently have to point out that the weirdly shaped building that is the city's logo was built, well, modified, extended as a house improvement, by the Prince Regent for his mistress stroke secret wife. Right? She could be either, depending on your definition of marriage. Right? You give me a definition of marriage, we can decide which, but I'm from Brighton, we live with ambiguity. And again, on the subject of marriage, I don't see any of the world's major religions going for this. I could be wrong, but I'll just throw that out. Now, maybe the attractive side of a robot lover is because you've done too much science fiction. You'll have to forgive me, because I've taught AI for a long time, and you meet an awful lot of sci-fi buffs. The problem with science fiction is it's very easy to dress a human actor up and tell them to play a robot, right? Which gives you a misleading picture of what robots look like. Right? So, this is not a robot. This is a human pretending to be a robot. And even my personal favourite, the Buffy bot, is not a robot. This is a human actor pretending to be a robot. On the other hand, this is a robot. The Raytheon cruise missile, Tomahawk, one of the most successful robots around, saved the name of the company written on the side there. That's what real robots look like. Or, not the guy at the back, looking rather amused. These are robots here. In fact, this Perspex entity was called the Drawbot. So I'll look at our artist. It was meant to work out how to produce creative pictures. And you'll notice a felt tip pen in the middle of it. Moving about making felt tip marks on papers wasn't difficult. The difficult bit was assessing them and getting creative. Yeah, meant to, I said. Not a terribly successful project, but that's what real robots look like. The Japanese have a very positive evaluation on robots, and they go off for what I call talking mannequins. Actroid is the name of the company. I'm not going to show you a video. You can go and look at videos if you're interested. These robots do a job which I believe when humans do it is called spokesmodel. Look at this wonderful new Toyota. Please come this way, or whatever. This was the prettiest one I could find, but if you look carefully at the hands, you'll see there's a slightly awkward positioning. And the reason for that is something called the uncanny valley. You all heard of the uncanny valley? Yes. Let me explain it. Was first noticed by a Japanese puppeteer. Notice the Japanese are on point in a lot of this area, and in particular replacing human activity by robots. They have quite a positive valuation of robots compared to the West. Masahiro Mori was a Japanese puppeteer. Notice this, but then it's been published many times since, and it's something that you learn first week in a robot lab. The idea is, let's do it, Lisa.
It's the top one.
I'll get most of the technology. The idea is, as you press along this axis here to be more human-like, people prefer it. So this axis increases up to this point when it's almost, but not quite, like a human. Then people experience a deep revulsion. Right? And you'll notice that Japanese robots like Aibo, the Sony dog and all that, don't go too close to reality. And that's because of the uncanny valley, because of this experience of revulsion. Now, not everybody does experience this revulsion, but it's certainly the feeling I get from the Actroid. When you get a robot that's almost, but not quite human, people generally have a deep revulsion to it. And I have to say that for at least 15 years, people have contacted me and said, Blay, come to the lab. We've got an animatronic head that's the other side of the uncanny valley, but they never have. Right? Now you're probably wondering about the sex thing. Right? Well, you can go home and Google it as much as you like. People are having sex with robots all over the world tonight. If you want to know how they deal with this problem, you'll have to speak to me later. Right? Because I don't want to say any more about sex. I want to concentrate on love now. Is that okay?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to, whether you like it or not. If you really want to talk about the sex thing, that's for later. I want to talk about love. And remember there's a commercial element in it. Remember I put Jane Austen up at the beginning. Right, so, can you love a robot? Levy says you can. Levy says if you become more and more familiar with the technology you have all around, all the time, then you could come to love it. And I'm prepared to agree with him about that. Right? I think it would be possible for you to love a robot. Not difficult, but I reserve the right to say, quoting the 21st century Jane Austen, so you're pretty strange then. And it's Gas to Johnny. Gas to Johnny in the British Street Motors van. Well, you're clearly not as familiar as I am with the work of the 21st century Jane Austen, but there's an important technology ethics message in there which you might want to consider. So you're pretty strange. In the old days, if you were pretty strange, everybody in St Leonard's would say you're pretty strange. But the internet has changed all that. The internet will put you instantly in touch with the other 6 people on the planet who share your particular strange affection. And then you are no longer a strange person in St Leonard's, you are part of an oppressed minority. That could be good, that could be bad, but maybe I'm in trouble for saying you're pretty strange. But people could love a robot. That's not the most difficult philosophical question, is it? The most difficult philosophical question is, can the robot love you? No one's shouting answers at me. No. But I don't mind a hard question. So, I'll throw one question at you straight away. Will a very good simulation, no T in it, will a very good simulation do? Because, in fact, already you've seen the technology that can do this simulation. In particular, I whisper sweet things. James Taylor, handyman, right? In particular, ChatGPT, Bard, a lot of modern large language model technology will work out what you want to hear, when you want to hear it, and feed it to you. Right? And if you want it to argue with you, right? If you want the Donna Henshaw program, that's doable too. Right? It's not difficult. Have you all heard of the Eliza effect? No. Well, you need to. God. Oh. Eliza was the first ever chatbot produced by Joseph Weizenbaum in 1960, probably 66. Right? Not exactly cutting-edge technology. Called Eliza for Eliza Doolittle. It gave the illusion of talking to you. And very quickly, Weizenbaum, he actually wrote the program as a joke. Right? This was not meant to be serious AI. It was a joke. Right? Because people were playful back then. But then his secretary said, can you leave the office please, and having a personal conversation with the program. And then he noticed that people took this joke rather too seriously. The Eliza effect, as it's now called, is the tendency of people to assume that technology is human, or much more human-like than it really is. Right? And you're all suckers for it. I'm the person at the robot conferences shouting, you know, when people say it's she, you know, you go to a restaurant and I say, I bought on the phone with your robot, and they say, Claire. And I say, no, it was a robot. Yeah, but she's called Claire. No, she's not a she, it's a machine. Right? You can't give it a gender. Oh no, Claire takes thousands of bookings every minute. Well, yeah. And it's very, very easy to fool people. Now, I don't necessarily think this is a criticism of human beings. It's just the fact that they are human beings. And with a few gentle prods, they assume that what they're talking to is a human being. It's not difficult to deceive them. An analogy I've used a lot is cats rub their head against you, you know, to say hello. They rub against your leg. And people say, well, they think you're a big cat. And that would be a reasonable thing to say, because that exchange of sense from the glance on the side of the head is a standard greeting among felines. You'll see prides and lions do it and so on. But no, your cat doesn't think you're a cat. right? Not for 1 minute. Your cat knows you're an ape, right? But your cat only has cat behaviour in its repertoire, right? It can't shake your hand, right? So it's doing the cat thing. Well, it's exactly the same with humans. When they deal with a machine, they only have human behaviour in their repertoire. So there's some very interesting experiments by a group at Tufts University where they asked psychology undergraduates to instruct a robot, an ordinary commercially available neo-robot, to knock down a tower with blocks, but of course the robot wasn't subject to the experiment, they were, and the robot would say, please don't make me, just can text, the Eliza effect, just can text. It would say, please don't make me knock down that tower. It took me an hour to build it, and they'd hesitate. Or the robot would pretend to cry, right? And they wouldn't do it, right? And then they'd be interviewed afterwards, and they said, well, the robot was crying. Nobody wants to see a robot cry. It's just a machine. It's just been programmed to behave like that. So, yeah. So you've really got to think about simulating love. I believe it's simulatable. It's really not that hard. I believe that people will do it if they haven't done it already to you. Right? And you can only respond in a human way, like the cat rubbing its face against your leg. You only have human behaviour in your repertoire. It's also worth saying, because we're doing a deep philosophical question, that the question of what is love is not exactly fixed. Right? Have you all read Symposium? Has anybody read Symposium? You don't know what you're missing. Right? If I were to publish it now, some readers would burn my house down. There's some really salacious stuff in it. But unfortunately, you probably all know at least one thing that's in it. Has anybody ever heard of a platonic relationship? Well, where the hell do you think that comes from? Oh, and by the way we use platonic relationship in modern terminology is not exactly what Plato defines love as in Symposium. I'd really recommend, it would sound like a university lecture now, won't I? You must read the original text. Yeah, Symposium contains definitions of love, very few of which we would recognise now, and some of which would get your house burned down by some readers. The Greeks had 3 words for love: philia, which is family love, or brotherly love, or whatever, that's in Philadelphia and so on. Eros, which gives us erotic and so on, for sexual love, and agape. And agape is sort of like peace and love, peace and love. It's love for all of humanity. And it's quite an interesting division of the word, quite a useful division of the word, I think. And love as agape was really taken up when St. Paul says, talks about love, he means agape in the Greek. He does not mean philia or eros. It would translate as agape. And then we have romance coming in and courtly love. I've dated it to yours, so that you can date it where you like. And I'm not including Jane Austen in this, but we can discuss Jane Austen, if you like. But right at the end, I've got Lord Zuckerberg's contribution. And why do I think Facebook is important? Because Facebook was a seemingly innocent piece of technology that changed a lot of definitions. Now, my definition of the word friend is someone who phones you up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you say, right, I'm on my way. Now, I put it to you, you could not have 200 people in your life who fall into that category, still less 2,000. My definition of like is to adopt an affective state, an emotional reaction to something. It is not to tick a box. But these words are all changing. Technology has the ability to change meanings. And I allow the possibility that with robotic companions becoming the norm, that the meaning of the word love may just change. Right? So the meaning of the word love has changed a lot over history. Go read Symposium. Right? You don't have to agree with any of it, but you do have to read it. It could change more if we're all living with robotic companions. Oh yes, this you know, at school I would translate Symposium as piss up. And get told off, we do not translate it into the vernacular, Whitby. It means a drinks party. But probably to you it means an academic gathering. Right? The reason the meaning of that particular word changed from piss up to academic gathering is this is a picture of group files at a symposium. Men only at middle-class Athenian houses would have a room just for men, shown laying on couches, being served wine in flagons, often by naked slaves of both sexes, and the evening ended in communal sex on the floor. I think piss up's a pretty good translation. But the reason it comes to me an academic gathering is because in that book, right, Symposium by Plato, at Plato's Symposium, they say, I believe the opening sentence is, let us send the flute girls away and discuss philosophy. Right? So that's another change of meaning. But it's still worth reading. Right. Do you want an intimate companion robot? Have the implications been discussed in any detail? Not really. I mean, artists and science fiction writers have kicked them about in some interesting ways. But, as I say, science fiction gives you a very human impression of robots. And I can tell you why that is, actually. It's a definition of fiction that it should be drama between characters. So if you've got a character in your science fiction that's a machine, basically you've got to make it like a human. Right? You've got to give it at least a pretense of human emotion for it to work as a character in fiction. Right? And boring people like me say, it's just a machine. Right? It doesn't really work in science fiction. Commercial imperative. You must decide, but I just gently suggest to you that if I stand here and I say, I'm a technology ethicist, you don't need a robot lover. You should look after your granny. You don't need a robot nanny. You should care for your kids yourself. There's 7.5 billion humans in the world. You know, use a human instead. That's fine, but no money needs to change hands. If, on the other hand, David Levy or Baron Musk or Lord Zuckerberg say, he won't call you back. Don't bother with humans, you'll get nasty diseases. I will sell you a piece of technology that will do that job. Then the wheels of profit turn, industry expands, people in Silicon Valley get rich. You see why I say there might be a commercial imperative? You don't have to agree. And there's the word may there. That may be a commercial imperative at work. Right? No one's going to make any money out of saying, be nice to each other. Right? You don't need a machine to do it. Just a thought, just a thought. The title of the slide is the title of the paper, which got me into a lot of trouble. It's a riff off Tammy Wynette. Oh, believe me, it got me into trouble. But what sort of people might want a robot lover? Now again, I'll just gently suggest that one group of people might be people who want to do things to their robot lover that will be illegal or immoral, where they to do them to a human. Not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying that's an obvious reason. You see, I'm sorry I'm giving you questions here, but this is all coming down the track very fast, and you really need to think how you're going to react to it before someone tells you how you're going to react to it. I know people will do nasty things to robots. How do I know this? They already do. Right? Until ChatGPT and fancy add-ons with Google Bard and so on. The main way people met AI was how smart a character was in a video game at dodging out of the way when they were shooting at it. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, I'm just saying I know people will do nasty things to robots because they already do. Okay. On a serious note, for a minute, I'm not talking about mythical future technology. A lot of these things really are here now. Smart homes are highly automated apartments, typically for older people with deteriorating cognitive facilities. Right? Cyber therapy, do you all know about this? Yes. You do? Oh good. Lots of people say yes. Well, essentially, the World Health Organization declared depression an epidemic in a number of countries, including this one. Certainly the NHS and New Zealand Health Services recognise computer cognitive behavioural therapy, CCBT, as an acceptable therapy for depression and anxiety, and it seems to work. Computers are nearly as good as humans in psychotherapy, oddly enough. So that's there now. Robot nannies are there now. I should point out that under UK law, it's illegal to leave your child in the care of a robot. Well, that's just to stop you suing me, but you can buy these things. They're not that good. Because in countries that have a much more positive attitude to robots, like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, they're producing robot nannies. And of course, the robot nanny can let you see, when you're in the park, let you see what's going on with the kids on your smartphone, and you can talk to them. You know, it's technology. I was part of a large number of people who said this is maybe a dangerous path, and maybe we should keep the legal prohibition on leaving a child in the care of a robot, maybe because we don't know. We don't know how kids will grow up if they're brought up by robots. Are we ready to run this experiment? Well, there's another question for you. Are we ready to run this experiment? But robot nannies, these are some of the technologies where we're looking at replacing human contact with a machine. Do we really want to do it? Yeah. Maybe you think Elon Musk has got all the answers. I think there's still some questions to be answered here. So, does it matter? I think so. I think public attitudes matter. You don't have to roll over in face of all this technology, even if there is a commercial imperative. Okay, for anyone who has been, thank you for listening. Oh.